All right, welcome to part 2 of the bullet spread tutorial. So in the last one, we got it so that we could fire our bullets in a nice circular pattern based on whatever our angle was. So the next thing we want to do is make it so that a circle shows up on the screen, and the circle should perfectly outline where the bullets are going to go so that the player knows, roughly where his shotgun bullets are going to hit. We can delete this guy. I don't know what this is down here. All right, so to do that, the first thing we need to do is make a material that's capable of rendering a circle like the one we want. So let's come back here just to like our content folder, or really wherever you want to do it. I'm just going to do everything right here in the content folder. And we're going to right click and make a new material. So select material, and we'll just call this m_circle. So let's open this up. And I'll be showing you guys how to create a circle material. And the reason I'm doing this is because you might be thinking, well, why can't I just get a texture of a circle and render that to the screen? Well, you could do that, and that's what a lot of tutorials do. But again, I try to do this better than all the other tutorials. So if you take a look at my other project here that I'm running again, you can see the actual width of the circle never changes in terms of pixels. So even though I'm zooming in, you can see the thickness of the line is still always the same. And if you were using a texture to do this and you were just scaling the texture, well, as you scaled the texture, obviously the thickness of the line would get thicker and thicker and thicker, which, at least every game that I played, that's not the case, or you don't want that to be the case. You want the thickness of the circle to be the same no matter, how accurate it is. And that's why we're making a material for it, so we can control that. Okay, so back over here. So to make a circle, it's pretty straightforward if you know how to do it, but it's kind of complicated if you don't. But just follow along. So we want to use this thing called radial gradient exponential. And so we want two of these, so copy this and paste it. So for the density, we just want some high value. So I'm going to hold down 1 and then left click to create a constant. You can also do this by just right clicking and searching for constant, and it will do the same thing. But it's basically just a number. So we want to set this to some really high value, like 1,000, because normally this is used for a gradient, but we don't want any gradient. We just want a solid color. So we're going to set this to our density. And for the radius, we want to do a little bit of math. So we want to make another one of these. So hold down 1 and left click. And this is going to be 0.5. And that's going to go into our top radius. And then for our bottom radius, we need a subtract. So we'll say subtract. Subtract. And we need to create some parameters here for the user to pass in. So we want the user to be able to find the thickness of the circle and the scale of the circle. So hold down 1 again and left click. And then this time right click on this and say convert to a parameter. And we'll call this the thickness. And then we'll do that again. So hold down 1, left click, and then right click, convert to parameter. And we'll call this the scale. And if we come over here to our parameter defaults, we can set the default values for these. So for our scale, we want it to be 1 by default. And for our thickness, we want it to be something pretty small, like 0.05. Again, you can adjust this thickness value, the default value for it, to be whatever you want, but that's what I used in the other one. So to get the other radius, we need to multiply these together. So multiply, and then we need to divide this value by 2 since it's a radius. So divide by 2. So we need just to, oh yeah, it already has 2. If you click on this and look over here on the left, it has 2 right here for the bottom number. So that's good. That's good. And then hook that up to the subtract. And now if we come over here and we subtract these, you'll see a circle magically. So we'll say subtract and subtract. And if we hit this little drop down to see what it looks like, and we hit apply, save. Oh, we never hooked up our other radius. We got to hook up our radius. And there we go. So now we have this little red circle. So this is going to go into our, oh, we need to change the type of this. So click on this guy over here, and it needs to be set to user interface since we're going to be using it on the interface. So say user interface for the material domain. And then we need to change the blend mode to translucent so that it can be transparent. So this is going to be our opacity. And then our color is going to be whatever color we want the circle to be. So we can make a parameter for that as well. So if you hold down 3 and left click, it will create a constant 3 vector. And if we right click on this and convert it to a parameter, we can then call it color. And let's go over here to our defaults and let's default it to white. And again, feel free to change this to whatever color you want and then hook that up to the final color. So now if we apply and save, you can see it shows as this nice circle, and we can easily change things about it. So we can change the thickness to like 2, for example, and it will make it thicker circle. Oh, the thickness has to be between 1 and 0, I forgot. So if we set it to like 0.5, you can see we have a very thick circle. 0.1, it's less thick. I think 0.05 is what I was using before. And we can change the color, and it will change the color. So yeah, so it all works nicely. Feel free to play with those values. Oops, I didn't mean to set this back. I want this to be 1 by default. The only thing I will say is don't leave the scale as 1 by default. We don't really want to change that here. We're going to be changing that in blueprints. So there we go. Now we have a material that renders a circle for us, and we can easily control how it looks. All right, so the next thing we need to do is create our HUD widget so we can actually display this. So let's come back here, right-click User Interface, and select Widget Blueprint. And we will call this our HUD underscore widget. So let's open this guy up. And inside of here, it's going to be pretty straightforward. So we want a canvas panel, which we already have. And then we want to add our image for our circle. So drag in the image onto the canvas panel. Now we want to select the image, and we want to change the anchor point to be in the center of the screen. So select that. And then for these positions, we want to set them to 0 and 0. And we want to set the size to 128 by 128. And then the alignment to 0.5 and 0.5. So you can see now we got the image in the middle of the screen. And then the next thing we need to do is change our brush to be our material. So if you hit this brush and search for m underscore circle, we can select our circle. Now if you don't see your circle here, that's probably because you didn't change your material domain to be user interface, or maybe you forgot to save it or something. So it needs to be set to user interface in order for it to show up over here in this list. But hopefully that worked for you guys as well, and you can now see your circle here. So now we have our circle in the middle of the screen, which is good. And the next thing we want to do is add this to the viewport. So if we come back to our first person character, and we come up here to the top inside of begin play, we want to create that widget and then add it to our viewport so it adds it to the screen. So we'll right click and say create widget. And the widget we want to create is the HUD widget. So search for HUD widget. So the owning player is asking for the controller, so we can just say get controller. And this returns a controller, so we want to cast it to a player controller. So cast to player controller, like so. Put that guy up to there. And then we can promote this to a variable. So right click on the blue node and say promote to variable. And we will call this our HUD widget. I'm just going to move it up here under the shotgun section as well. And then we can drag off this and say add to viewport. And there we go. So now if we run this, we can see we have our circle on the screen. However, the bullets are not really very accurately going inside of the circle yet because we need to write the code to have the circle adjust according to whatever the angle is. But you should at least have the circle on the screen at this point. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is start writing the code inside of our HUD widget so that this circle updates to be the correct size. Now, there's one thing we need to do that's really important here, is we need to adjust the DPI scaling so that the DPI does not automatically scale our widget. So if we come over here and we select this, we want to get rid of this DPI scaling. So if you just delete all of these but one, and then select this guy and set the scale to 1, and it doesn't really matter what the resolution's set to, you can just set it to like 0, so it's basically just a line on the where the Y is always 1. And so this will make it so that the computer, or that the engine, doesn't automatically try to change the size of this circle, or our HUD, whenever we resize the window, because we're going to be handling that ourselves, because we need to handle that ourselves so that the circle can be the correct size. So if we come back here now, to our HUD widget, and we go to the graph tab, we want to do a few things inside the initialize. So let's delete all this. So we actually need this material right here that we set. We need this to be a dynamic material because we need to change these properties, like our thickness. Well, we need to specifically change our scale inside of this blueprint. And so in order to do that, we need it to be a dynamic material. So if we right click, we can do this on the initialize. So we'll say event on initialize. We want to create that dynamic material. So we'll say create dynamic material instance. And the parent is going to be rm_circle. And let's right click on this, promote it to a variable. And we will call this our circle material. And then we want to set our image. So drag in your image. We want to set our image to use that material. So we'll say set brush from material and hook up that material. And then the last thing we want to do is just cache the player so that we can easily access it later, because we're going to need access to it. So to do that, let's just right click and say get owning player pawn. And we know that this is going to be a first person character, or whatever character happens to be the character in your game. So you want to cast it to that, whatever that is. So in this case, it's cast to first person character. And then let's save that. So right click on this guy, promote to variable. And I'm just going to call it the owning player. Okay, so if we run this at this point, it should look exactly the same. The only real difference is, well, technically the circle is a little bit bigger now, and it's actually the correct size, but we can't scale it yet. And the only difference is that there's no DPI scaling, which is why the circle is the correct size, for right now at least. And also, this material that you see for the circle is actually a dynamic material, but it should look pretty much the same. So it should look like that. Okay, let's see, what do we do next? So each tick, we need to update that circle to make sure it's the correct size. So let's say event tick. And then I'm going to make a little helper function for this. So I'm just going to make a function over here and call it update circle. And then we'll just go ahead and call that from the tick. And then let's come inside of here. So this is where the math is going to get a little confusing, if it hasn't already been confusing already. So what we want to do is we want to set the scale of this, well, the whole HUD, basically. We want to scale the HUD based off of whatever angle the bullets are coming out of the shotgun at. Because if the bullets are coming out of the shotgun at a very large angle, then obviously we want to scale this circle to be larger as well, so that it shows you that your bullets are going to go in a much larger radius. So to do that, we're eventually going to be calling set render scale, but it's just a matter of figuring out what do we pass here for this value. And again, we're going to calculate that based on the bullet angle. So it's just basic trigonometry to figure this out. So if you want to get out a piece of paper and kind of draw out what I'm about to show you, if you want to try to understand the math yourself, go ahead. But I'm just going to code it out the way it needs to work. So we want to get the bullet angle from the player. So we'll drag in the owning player, and we'll say get bullet angle. And we need to take the tangent of this. So tangent, and again, make sure you do tangent in degrees because this bullet angle is in degrees. So tangent in degrees. And we want to do a float multiply. And we need to multiply it by the size of the screen. Well, the minimum dimension of the screen, because that's the way the scaling works. It takes the minimum dimension of the screen, whether it's the height or the width. Usually it's the height, because usually the height of the screen is shorter. So the minimum dimension of the screen divided by the radius of this circle here. And the radius of this circle is 64 because we have it set to 128. So we will say we need some value. No, we can't write this yet because I haven't written it in. Crap. So we need some value that represents the minimum screen dimension. So we're going to come back to this in a second. We need the minimum screen dimension. So to get that, the only way I found to get this, and I tried to figure this out literally forever, is inside of, if you come back here to your, where is this thing? Third person, blueprints, this first person HUD. If you don't already have one of these, like if you're following along in your project that already exists, you need a HUD object. And to create one of those, if you don't already have one, you can right click and go to blueprints, or actually, you might have to go to blueprint class and then search for HUD down here and create one. And then once you have one created, you need to set it in your game mode if you don't already have that. So like if you open up your game mode, there's a section for HUD class, and you can see it's already set to our first person HUD. But if you don't already have one, you need to create one, and then you need to set it here to the one you created. But anyways, if you're following the tutorial along, then you should already have this. So we want to open this guy up. So these values right here are actually the length or the dimensions of the screen. Now it's not actually the dimensions of the window, it's actually the dimensions of what you can see. Because if we come back to our first person character here, and we go to our camera, and we turn on constrain aspect ratio, you can see if I scale this, there's black bars that are appearing because it's keeping the ratio, the aspect ratio of the window consistent. It's keeping the ratio to be 1.777. That's the ratio. And this is actually really important. So you do need to check this checkbox. Well, you either need to check the checkbox or you need to make it so that the window can only be, like the ratio stays the same. So if you scale it, it always scales at this ratio. That's what a lot of games do. That's what like PUBG does, for example. If you try to scale the window, it will make it so that you can only scale it so that the ratio stays the same. Or you can just check this checkbox and it'll add black bars instead of forcing the window size. But so yeah, make sure you check that checkbox. But what I was trying to say is, what I was trying to help you guys understand is that you can see the size of the window is actually significantly higher than the size of what you can actually see in the game because there's so many black bars. And likewise, if you do it this way and you scale it down, you'll get black bars on the side. And so the dimensions we want are these dimensions, the dimensions of the actual game. And the only way to get that is, or at least the only way that I found to get that, is inside of this HUD class. So that's what these values are. So we basically just need to send these values over to our HUD. So let's say get owning player, or was it get owning pawn, which is going to be the player. And so we can cast to our first person character again. And we want to take these values and send it over. So we want to get our HUD, so get HUD widget. And we need to make a function that takes in an X and a Y. So let's go over to our HUD widget real quick again. And we'll make a little function. We'll come back to this one later. Make a function over here called just update from screen size, or something like that. And then we need to take in two integers. So integer, we'll call this size X. No, not size C. Size X. And another one for size Y. Compile this, come back here, and we'll call update from screen size, like so. And then we just want to pass in our X and our Y. So we'll pass in our X. I'm just going to add some reroute nodes here by double clicking, just to make it a little more organized. Just like this. Okay. So again, all we're doing is we're passing these x and these y values to our HUD widget. So now we can come back here, and basically inside of here, we want to figure out which one of these is the minimum value. Because remember, the way the scaling works is that it takes the minimum of the width and the height, and it uses that to determine the scale. So we can just say min, take the minimum value, and promote this to a variable. And we will call this the min screen dimension, like so. And we can actually print this out so you can kind of see what's going on. So let's just call it a print string here. And then let's drag off of this string and say append. And so for A, let's just type the min screen dimension, and then a colon, and then a space. And then we'll drag in this guy. So I think this should at least print this now. Let me double check that we have everything hooked up. So back in our HUD, this is getting called, and it's calling our update from screen size, and then update from screen size. Takes the min and it prints it. Okay. And then is our event doing anything? No. Okay. So if we run this now, you can see it's printing out 720. And that's because, well, our window is, what is it exactly? I think it's 1280 by 720. But you can see if we start scaling this to the right, you can see the min dimension, which is the y, is going down because the screen is actually shrinking. So you want to make sure that this is working correctly. You want to make sure that it's printing out the minimum dimension. And you see if I get bigger than the screen itself, the min dimension doesn't actually change because the width of the window, or sorry, the height of the window is not actually changing because of the black bars. It's only when I start shrinking the screen that the min dimension, which is again the height, starts shrinking. So those are that's the magical number that we need. So now that we have that, we can come back to where we were before. So go back to our HUD widget and go inside of update circle. So we need to take the min screen dimension, and we want to do a divide. So let's say float divide, hook that up. And we want to divide that by the radius of our circle. So to get that, we can just drag in our image, which is our circle image, and we can cast it to a canvas slot because that's the only way you can get the size. So we'll say slot to, or what is it called? Slot to, or slot as canvas slot. And then we can get the size. So we'll say get size. And then since it's a square, we can just break this guy or split this pin and just use the X or the Y. It doesn't really matter because again, it's a square, so they're going to be the same. And then, oh wait, before we hook that up, we need to divide by 2 because this is going to return 128, but we want half of it because we want the radius. So we'll say float divide by 2, and then we'll hook this up like so, and that up like so. So this value is going to be the scale that we want to set it at. So we can just say make vector 2D, and we'll plug this in for the X and the Y, and then we'll hook that up like so. So let me just make sure this is correct real quick. So we're getting the bullet angle, we're taking the tangent of that, and then we're multiplying that by the screen dimension divided by the radius of the image. Okay, so let's give this a try. Play it. Okay, that seems to be still working pretty good. Now let's make it so we can actually change the size of the circle using the mouse wheel so that we can really test this out. So if we come back here to our first person character, let's come down here to the bottom, and below where we do the firing code, let's add an input for the mouse wheel. So we say input mouse wheel axis, or axis, in mouse wheel axis, and we want to take this value and add it to the current bullet angle. So we'll say bullet angle float plus whatever is the value of the axis. And then we want to clamp this so that it doesn't get too crazy. So we'll clamp float. we want to clamp it between like 2 degrees and like, I think I used 25 degrees in the example at the beginning, and then set bullet angle to that. So now if we run this again, we should see that if we scroll the mouse wheel, the circle gets bigger and smaller with it. Now, one thing you'll notice is that as the circle gets smaller, the thickness of the line that's drawing the circle also gets smaller. And that's what I was kind of talking about at the beginning, which is not something that's very desirable. Ideally, the thickness of the line would stay the same. But you can see if we fire, things seem to be working pretty well. The bullets are all going inside of the circle. And so that math is working pretty well. But we just want to make it so that the thickness of the line doesn't actually change. And to do that, we can do that pretty easily now, since we have that material that we made. So we come back to our HUD widget, and let's see, update, update from circle. So after we set the render size of the render scale of the screen, we want to set that scale value. If you remember in our material, we want to set the scale value to be based on how much the angle has changed from the original offsetted, or from the original 5 value that we had it set to. So if we drag in our circle material, we can say set scalar parameter value, and the value we want to set is the scale. So type scale here. And again, the value is going to be how much our angle has been scaled by. So we can drag in our owning player, and it's just a simple division. It's going to be our starting bullet angle divided by our current bullet angle. And we'll just divide these guys and hook that up to the value. So now if we run this, you can see if we zoom in, or not zoom in, but increase the radius, the thickness of the circle stays the same. And the shooting still works pretty nicely. Okay, so if everything's working, then continue on to part 3. Otherwise, go back and watch part 2 to make sure, or to figure out what you messed up. Otherwise, I will see you guys in part 3.